Hello there, Plexers. Alex Sturgeon, HobbyTown HobbyPlex, here for another edition of Alex Fixes. This time it is a 1/16 scale Mini Revo, something we haven't done on this yet. And the form says rear diff and servo saver. So we're going to have to kind of dig into this one, see what's all wrong with it, and see if we can get it fixed for our customer. Let's check it out. Okay, well, here's our subject for this video. It is a 1/16 scale Mini Revo, and it's got a lot going on. So a couple things that they wanted us to look at were the rear diff and probably the rear ring and pinion gear is going to be my guess, and then the steering. So let's see what it does here. So it doesn't turn all the way to the left, so we'll have to you can see the servo saver is really giving out right there, so we'll take a look at that. Maybe we just need to tighten something down. And then the rear, let's give that a listen. Oh yeah, she's toast. So one of my least favorite cars to work on is one of these. So yeah, we'll have to get in there. There's a lot to undo to get to the rear bulkhead and to get that ring and pinion gear out of there. So this could be a long bit of time lapse. Okay, one of the things I wanted to check before I started really disassembling the entire rear bulkhead off the little 16 scale Revo here was this little screw right here. So it was loose, and so you have to take the center skid plate and the rear skid plate off to get to it. We would have to take this off anyways, but I wanted to check and see, save myself some time, is maybe this had just backed out, and that's why it wasn't going anywhere. And so it was loose. I did tighten it up and check the rear end, and it still is still not going anywhere. But if that's all it was, it would have saved us a tremendous amount of time. And it's always a good thing to look for first, especially if we're dealing with any four-wheel drive, but just like a T-Max, Revo, of course 16 scale Revo, any of these that have those center drive shafts. A lot of times when somebody loses rear drive, instead of it being a ring and pinion gear, a lot of times it is just the drive shaft, and it's way easier to fix. So I wanted to check that first before we moved on, but unfortunately I'm pretty sure it's still a ring and pinion gear, so we're going to keep going. All right, let me just say outright that whoever designed this car needs to get punched in the face, or at least take like a gut punch from somebody, because basically you have to take off everything to get to this. So front and or center and rear skid plates, your shocks, because those screws actually go into the bulkhead, the ends. Where are those at? These guys right here, because they go into the bulkhead right here through the chassis. Of course, the center drive shaft, but you know, that's a given. But anyways, I don't know. It just feels like a lot. I mean, if you compare it to, say, a Slash 4x4, a Max, even an X Max, I think is way easier than this. Makes sense though. This is kind of an older design. This truck's been around for, God, how long has it been? Like what, 15 years? So, anyways, I'm gonna show you guys the culprit here. There is kind of a flat spot in there. Where'd you go? Oh, right there. One of them. There's probably multiple, but you can kind of slide it past that that pinion gear a little bit. It's definitely mashed up. So we're just gonna replace all that, and then put the rear end back together and then move on to the steering. Yeah, we'll continue on. All right, here's a pet peeve of mine that I want to share with you guys. I want you to look at this diff gear, and then I want you to look at this diff gear. I just applied a tiny little bit of lithium grease because that's all you need. This is just caked in it, and the diff cases themselves are also just caked in it, and I'm going to wipe most of that away. I'm not going to obviously use this one ever again, but I'm going to clean it up because you don't need a ton of this stuff, especially on gears that are this small, because basically what you're doing is if you put too much grease in there, it'll pack too much grease. It'll actually cause it to battle the drive shaft, right? It'll work against itself and actually cause your stuff to strip. So you only need a tiny little bit of it to lube it up, and that's all you need. The other thing why you don't use a lot is because also this grease does attract a fairly decent amount of dirt, and so it'll actually get thicker and thicker and thicker the more dirt gets in there. So whatever you do when you're putting in a new diff or you're doing some maintenance, do not pack a ton of grease, lithium grease, build grease, whatever you want to call it. Don't use a lot of it. You only need a tiny little bit of it, and it'll go a long ways and make your stuff run as efficient as possible. Let's move on. Okay guys, our diff appears to be good. We'll give it a little goose here. Ooh, that's fast. Yep. So now we got to figure out the steering, and I looked at it before I turned on this little segment here, and I gotta say it almost feels like, let's shut this off, it almost looks like there's something physically stopping the steering from working all the way. So we're going to get in there and figure out why that is. What I'm going to do is try to isolate the problem. So I'm going to undo the front turnbuckles from the spindle and see if these turn all the way, and if they don't, then the source of our problem is here. If that turns all the way, then I'll undo it from here and turn this back and forth, and then the source of our problem will be here. We basically just have to try to narrow down what the issue is. So, okay, with that in mind, we'll keep going. Part one of the fix it for this thing is done. So now we're going to move on to the steering. Alright guys, so anytime that you have a problem like this where you're not getting as much steering as you think you should, it's best to try to isolate each individual part to see where the problem's at. So what I did was I unhooked our steering tie rods from the spindle, and I just started to turn these, and you can see the steering's pretty limited, right? Nothing's bound up, but a lot of times, you know, something is bound up, and so it was either over tightened or maybe it was built incorrectly. You can see this one doesn't turn at all one way to the right, I think. It's upside down. So and then if you see if I can turn this on.
I don't even know.
So if you see the steering, you see we have full steering down here. So it's not the servo's fault. It's not the servo linkage's fault. This tie rod is a little bound up, but you can see it's actually because it's come off the ball. But like this one is nice and loose. And anytime you have steering problems, check and see if you're bound up anywhere. Should be like this, not like this. So there's a couple compounding problems, but here's the deal. Here's what I figured out. You can see that top pillow ball right there is turned in all the way.
Yeah.
And this one is also turned in all the way. So when you go to turn it, it doesn't allow it to turn in full. So we're just going to reset the camber and reset the length of those pillow balls. Try to get them about 2 degrees of camber. I'm probably going to do the rears as well, just while I'm at it, just to clean this truck up a little bit. But I'm pretty sure that's all it is, and it's a very, very simple fix. So yeah, always do that. Always try to basically narrow down the problem, isolate each individual part, and see where your steering is either bound up or maybe even broken, you know, or maybe I was thinking maybe there was like something in there blocking it, you know. But in this case, it's just the pillow balls. So we'll continue on. All right, part 2 of our fix it here is done. So basically I realigned the pillow balls, made sure that it had, you know, about 2 degrees of camber. I eyeballed it. I didn't really use a camber gauge or anything, but you know, whatever. There you go. Full steering. I also messed with the rear a little bit too. One side had way more camber than the other side, so I evened it out. But now we've got full throw. Let's go see how it does. All right, clapped out Mini Revo rear transmission fix and steering. Let's see if we fixed it. Well, I can see why the rear end got torn up. Pretty rad. Turns good both ways. It needs some it needs some oil in the shocks, but I'd say it's pretty good. We'll call this customer up and have him come pick it up, and that'll conclude yet another edition of Alex Fixes. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe, like, tell your friends, and we'll do another one for you soon.